Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Loving obeisances unto the Supreme Being Vasudeva, who is everything there is. Janmadyasya yato anvayaditaratascha artheshu abhigyasvarat tene brahmahridaya adikavaye muhyanti yat surayah tejo vari mridam yatha vinimayo yatratra sargo mrisha dhamna svena sada nirastakuhakam satyam param dhimahi. We meditate upon the transcendent absolute being from whom springs forth this universe. He is present in all that exists and yet distinct from everything. He is fully conscious and totally independent. He revealed to the first seer Brahma the import of Vedic wisdom. The material creation, made of threefold gunas, appears in him as though real, like water in a mirage. Being eternally self effulgent, he is ever free of the illusion Maya of the material world. We meditate upon him, the Supreme Being. निगमकल्पतरोर्गलितं गलितं फलं शुकमुखादमृतद्रवसंयुतं पिबत भागवतं रसमालयं मुहुरहो रसिका भुवि भावुकाः. O devotees who relish a taste for divine love, Bhagavatam is the fully ripened fruit of the wish-yielding tree of Vedas, flowing as immortal nectar from Shuka Brahma Rishi. Go on drinking this sweet nectar day after day. So now we are entering the 22nd chapter of the third Skandha of Srimad Bhagavatam. We saw sage Kardama being blessed with a vision of the Supreme Being and told that Swayambhuva Manu will come with his daughter to offer her as a spouse, and accordingly the Manu came, and the sage glorified Manu and also, by way of glorifying him, told about the right way a king has to execute his royal duties. Now we continue. Having listened to the sage, the Manu, Swayambhuva Manu, was very pleased, and he in turn replied with humility. He said, "Indeed, it is because of great sages like you who are always in tapas, in austerity, as well as in yoga and in learning, and who are always averse to all pleasures of the senses. It is because of you that the universe is being protected in its order, and we Kshatriyas, we rulers, only are protecting you so that you can protect us. But in reality, we are all protected by the Supreme Lord." So this is because, as Manu is also a royal sage, he recognizes that the sages, the real Brahmanas, who are only engaged in wisdom, who are engaged in austerity, who are engaged in abiding in self knowledge and disseminating self knowledge, are the essential aspect of society, even though they may not be engaged in external activities. And the Kshatriyas, the rulers, their job is to protect and make sure the land is conducive by eliminating the wicked, by promoting the virtuous, so that such sages and those who are interested in looking within and in taking to meditation and in living a higher life are able to do so peacefully. So there is mutual support between the rulers and the wise men, and this is also true for those who are engaged in knowledge activities, not just those who are inwardly focused, but even for engaging in science and other knowledge activities. A very peaceful environment is necessary, and that is to be guaranteed by the rulers. But in reality, everything is through the cause of the Supreme Being, because everything is as ordained. All these roles and responsibilities are as ordained by the Supreme Being, and as long as one is committed to his duties, whatever according to his propensities and his activities, then the whole order is maintained well. So, this is what Swayambhuva Manu tells the sage, And also he says, I am very glad that you also instructed me by way of telling about my royal execution of my royal duties. You instructed me as to how a right king is to function, and this is of great benefit to me and to everyone. So he also thanks the sage, and now the Swayambhuva Manu tells the sage, now I have brought my daughter here with me, as you can see, Devahuti, and this daughter of mine, who is a sister to her brothers Priyavrata and Uttanapada, she is on the lookout for a match. And she heard about you from the sage Narada, who had come to our kingdom, and she heard about your noble character, your learning, your young age, your virtues, and she has been fixed on marrying only you. So here we can see how everything is arranged so beautifully. While the Supreme Being appeared in front of sage Kardama after his penance to say that he will marry Devahuti, Devahuti was already told about this sage by Narada, that she developed an interest in marrying him. So it's all perfectly arranged. And so the king now says, please accept her as your wife, because she is most desiring to marry you, and also she'll be a very fit helpmate, or she'll be a very fit partner in executing your duties, in executing your dharma. Therefore, please accept her. And hearing this, the sage Kardama is pleased, and he says, indeed, it is true that I have also been having a desire to marry and have children, and therefore it is quite appropriate that you brought your daughter and you are offering her. And therefore, I am very glad to accept her. Who would not accept such a wonderful girl anyway? She is so resplendent, and she is known to be a yogini as well. And therefore, I shall take as my wife your daughter, but on one condition, he says, that is that I am only interested in having children for the sake of the instructions given to me by my father, as also to make sure that the earth is full of the right kind of beings. Once she has children, I will have to leave and go back to living the life of a recluse as a Paramahamsa, as he says, where I am focused exclusively on my meditation and my austerities and penance and so on. And because the highest goal is to realize the Supreme Being, and once I am done with my household duties, I would like to go off as a recluse. So, hearing this, Swayambhuva Manu looked at his wife and his daughter. The sage said this much and kept very quiet, but he noticed that his daughter was quite happy to the condition that the sage has put forth, and the queen was also happy because their daughter only wanted to marry the sage, and so they were all very happy with the condition too. So they accepted, and then the queen, Shatarupa, lovingly bestowed on the bride and the bridegroom valuable presents. They had come with their entire retinue in chariots, so they had brought a lot of presents. So they gave all the presents necessary to set up the house, or set up the various necessities for running a household, and so on. And after that was done, after a simple wedding followed by all the gifts were all done, the queen and the king departed with great fondness for her, and therefore tears in their eyes, because they were walking away, leaving the daughter. And also, one has to notice that this daughter, Devahuti, who has grown in a palace, is now going to live in a ashram on the banks of Saraswati river, which has got to be a very modest setting compared to the opulent palace she was living in. But of course, Swayambhuva Manu, being a royal sage, and his queen too, they know that real opulence comes from within, and therefore they had no second thought about giving their daughter away to the sage who was outwardly living very modestly in a small hermitage but inwardly rich. So they gave the daughter away like that, and with tears in their eyes, they bid adieu to the sage and their daughter, and then they left. And then on their way, they saw that there were so many hermitages like that on the banks of Saraswati, filled with so many great sages, each of them engaged in tapas. They were so pleased and blessed to see all these sages, and then they reached their capital. And it is said that after they reached their capital city, they settled down, and Swayambhuva Manu, being a great king, was able to execute his royal duties while being completely detached from sense pleasures, even though he was a great master in terms of creating various sense objects and creating and having all kinds of opulences around him. He was not touched by them. He was only devoted to the Supreme Being, to listening to the stories of Sri Hari. And it is said that he spent his rest of his life in this way, simply engaged in listening to the stories of Hari and to meditation and to devotion. It says here, Vasudeva Prasangena Paribhuta Gatitrayah. He was only engaged in Vasudeva Prasanga, that is, listening to the stories of Vasudeva, and thereby he was always in peace while also executing his royal duties, and therefore he was free of any bodily or mental troubles, and he had a very peaceful old age too. And it is said that he left the earth eventually after ruling for a long time as the first Manu. So this is the story of Swayambhuva Manu, briefly mentioned. And now we shift again back to the ashram where Devahuti is now the wife of sage Kardama. We also enter the next chapter, 23rd chapter of this Skandha. And here Devahuti is now serving the great sage. It is said just as Parvati serves Shiva. Parvati and Shiva are considered the ideal couple, and therefore, just as Parvati serves Shiva, Maitreya says, similarly, Devahuti was serving the sage without any negative quality whatsoever, and with great vigilance, ever alert and ever active. She was serving with purity of mind and body, reverence, total control of her senses, love in her heart, sweet speech. So, therefore, she was being the ideal wife, and she even looked very emaciated. She didn't even eat so much. She was always engaged in all the household work, even though she was a princess, and now she is in this forest hermitage. She took to the service of the sagely husband completely, to the point where she was also starting to look weak. So the sage looked on her with great compassion, and he was very pleased with his wife. And so he tells her, you have shown great respect and you have rendered great service to me, and you not even cared for your own body, which is such a rare thing. So he is very pleased, and the sage says, I first confer upon you supernatural vision. So the great sage Kardama is a great yogi. He has many supernatural powers. So first he does is he gives her a vision, a supernatural vision, by which she is able to see all kinds of enjoyments that one can have, which are all simply brought forth as a vision to her. So here he demonstrates that every enjoyment that one can have is simply a product of mind, and it can be brought forth by the mind. That's the inner meaning of showing that it can be revealed to her by a vision. And then after seeing this vision, Devahuti is very pleased. She says, I know that you have great yogic powers, and now I am very pleased to see this yogic power of you giving me this vision. And then she finally says, now after all this time, I do want to now engage in having children, because that is the sacred duty of a wife, to have progeny through her husband. Therefore, because all this time she has been engaged in service and they have been living a very austere life, both of them. So now she says, I would like to have children. So please tell me what arrangements need to be made first of all, and how I can also make my body healthy enough in order to be able to bear children. And then I would like to go about this sacred purpose of having children. Then the sage Kardama, he's got all this yogic power. So what he first does is he produces an aerial mansion, it is said. He is able to manifest a wonderful Vimanam. Vimanam is the word used in all Indian languages for airplanes today. And this is the word used in Bhagavatam to refer to the aerial mansion. And it is not an ordinary airplane, but it is an airplane of multiple stories, it is said, with a wonderful structure, with all kinds of jewels and precious stones, and having all kinds of articles lying around with flags and decorations and flowers. And inside the aerial mansion, there are cushions and beds and opulent seats and beautiful works of art. And there is diamond and sapphire and rubies. So it is an extremely opulent aerial mansion, not an ordinary airplane. And such an aerial mansion is manifested by the sage Kardama right there. Again, it shows that everything is created by the mind first, and if one has the power, the what is created in the mind can be also manifested in the outer reality. This is in fact how many inventions happen too. First, it's envisioned in the mind, and then it is brought to the physical reality. The yogic power of the sage means that there is no gap between envisioning and manifesting. So he is able to manifest what he envisions with this opulent airplane. And then he tells this lady, his beautiful wife, oh, beautiful lady, now you go and take a bath in the lake nearby. They are living by a lake, as we already saw, called Bindu Sarovar, near the banks of Saraswati River. So he says, please go and take a bath in this lake, and then you can ascend this aerial mansion. And so she listens to her husband and she enters the lake to take a bath. And to her great surprise, again, when she enters the lake, she sees inside the lake a, a lot of maids who are there, 1,000 maids, it is said, who are there full of youth and fragrance. And they are there as damsels who are ready to help her. They say, we are your maid servants. Tell us what we shall do for you. So all of this is manifested by the mystical yogic powers of the sage Kardama. We can see how this wonderful vision and all these wonderful powers give a very beautiful, colorful picture of what's happening in this otherwise completely solitary hermitage, suddenly coming alive with a great airplane. And then there is this lake with all these great maidservants. These are more interesting and more fantastical than any of the movies that one can see. So all these 1,000 maidservants come and they are serving her, and then they are helping her take a bath, and then they are dressing her up. They are giving her some very special food and drinks by which she regains all her health instantly. She is now again shining, and her physical health is back to its prime. Whatever she had lost due to intense service and austerity for all this time, she is now regained all that, and she is now shining, and she is wearing all jewelry with gold and necklaces and all the rest. And then she comes out of the lake, And when she sees the lake, when she comes out of the lake, the sage sees her and sees that she has regained her beauty just as he had envisioned. And therefore, he takes her and they both ascend this aerial mansion that he has manifested. And in the aerial mansion, again, the sage manifests so many wonderful beings who are there to serve them with good food and with entertainment and so on. And it is said that the sage took her around the earth on this aerial mansion, showing her all places. So here we see how the great sage who is living alone, solitarily in a hermitage with no contact with anyone else, but simply engaged in austerity with all the yogic powers, is able to manifest all the sense enjoyments that is necessary at the right time simply out of his mind. So it goes to show that everything that we have in this world are simply a manifestation of the mind, and one who has sufficiently won over the mind can manifest them at the time of his choosing and also let go of them when he is done with it without being bound by it. So, this is what the sage does by manifesting all these opulences, taking his wife and giving her the highest order experience of even household living, that is to say, of a conjugal life. And so they both are in this aerial mansion going around the globe. He's showing her all parts of the world right from the aerial mansion. And then after doing this, they come back to the same spot in the hermitage, and then they engage in the continuation of their conjugal life. And as she wishes, she gets to be pregnant, and it is found that she has 9 children come. So it was prophesied that she'll have 9 daughters, and it turns out that she is conceiving 9 at the same time. So then she gives birth, and there are 9 daughters who are born out of the great supernatural power of the yogi. Again, it was so effortlessly happening that she was able to bear and give birth to 9 daughters. And after all this happens, the sage finally says he wants to leave, and because he had told her father too that I would leave after the children are born. Of course, the supreme being had already prophesied that he will give birth to an avatar of the Lord, which is Kapila, which is yet to come. So the sage is aware of it, and yet he pretends as if he is about to leave. And Devahuti makes a plea to him that I am very glad that I've had all these 9 daughters, but I long also for a male child, because this is how Lord Kapila is going to manifest. And in order to make this happen, this Leela happens, and Devahuti makes this plea to the sage that I would like to have a male child, and I also want to now spend my time devoted to the Supreme Being. I have only loved you, and through loving you, I know that I can naturally have love for the Supreme Being, because love for great sages is different from love for ordinary beings. She says nicely that the same love, when bestowed on the wicked through ignorance, leads us down, but when it is bestowed on the great sages, on holy men, it removes all attachment for us. Therefore, this is why I have loved you, knowing that you are a great sage, and knowing that you will, at the right time, give me the highest knowledge and the supreme love for Sri Hari. And therefore, I, I only want to be devoted to you now, but I do have this one plea that I would like to have a male child with you before you leave me, as you had told originally to my father too. And so the sage smiles at her, and what he does now, and how because of this the great Kapila will descend, will continue with the next chapter. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.